Welcome everyone to a meeting of the Boston Region MPO Planning Organization. I'm David Moeller, I represent Secretary Phil Ing here. You are invited to participate in our transportation planning process, regardless of your race, color, national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender, identity, or expression, veteran status, or background. Read the full notice of your rights and protections at www.bostmon.org/MPO_NON_DISCRIMINATION. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant with exceptions with the following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 Level AA standards and revised Section 508 standards. If you require any additional accommodations in order to participate fully in this meeting, or if you have any technical difficulties, please contact Ibu Kurashi of the MPO staff at iquraishi@ctps.org or 857-702-3695 or via the chat box. All participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. Please rename yourself to include your first name, last name, and affiliation. After roll call, board members may mute and unmute themselves. Others remain muted unless actively speaking. To participate in the discussion, please select the raise hand function. Find this by clicking either on the participants button at the bottom of the screen, and a window will pop up with a raise hand button at the bottom, or the reactions button in the toolbar. The chair will then call on participants. Please raise your hand via Zoom if you would like to use an AI note taker during this meeting. And if you are on the phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. Please call the roll.
Certainly. MassDOT Seat 1,
This is David Moeller. I'm here.
MassDOT Seat 2,
Good morning. It's John Bashad representing Highway Administrator Jonathan Gulliver, present.
good morning. MassDOT Highway Division,
I think John Romano can't make it today.
thank you. Next is the MBTA, one more time, just calling the MBTA, otherwise I can return.
Yes, good morning. Sorry, this is Laura Gilmore for the MBTA.
Not a problem at all. Good morning, Laura. Regional Transportation Authorities, Metro West Transit Authority.
Morning, this is Tyler Trossi representing Administrator Jim Nee for the MWRTA. Present.
Good morning. Next is Massport. Do not see Sarah Lee at the moment. MAPC.
Good morning, Eric Barassa with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council.
Good morning. MBTA Advisory Board.
Good morning, Hannah Solikowski, MBTA Advisory Board.
Good morning. Advisory Council.
Caitlin Allen Conley for the MPO Advisory Council.
Welcome. City of Boston, Seat 1.
Good morning, everyone. Jen Rowe with the City of Boston, representing Mayor Michelle Wu.
Good morning. City of Boston, Seat 2.
Good morning, Patrick Hoey, Streets Boston, representing Mayor Michelle Wu.
Welcome. At-large city, City of Everett.
Good morning. This is Eric Molinari representing Mayor Carlo Di Maria in the City of Everett.
Morning. At-large city, City of Newton.
Good morning, David Kosis representing Mayor Ruth Ann Fuller and the City of Newton. And Dave, I wanted to let you know that around 11 o'clock I'll be stepping away and Jen Martin will be covering the rest of the meeting for Newton.
Thank you so much. Noting that down, and good morning. At-large town, Town of Arlington.
Leonard Diggins representing Select Board Chair Diane Mahan.
Hello. At-large town, Town of Brookline. And not seeing Aaron. Let me just see if or Mike. Minuteman. Oh, pardon me. Gonna next go to Intercore Committee, City of Somerville.
Good morning. This is Brad Rawson representing the City of Somerville, Mayor Ballantyne, and the Intercore subregion.
Good morning. Minuteman Advisory Group on Interlocal Coordination, Town of Lexington.
Hey, good morning. Megan Roach, representing the Lexington Select Board Chair Jill Hay for the Magic subregion.
Morning, Megan. Metro West Regional Collaborative, City of Framingham.
Dennis Giambetti, representing Metro West, and the Mayor of Framingham, Charles Ziski.
Welcome. North Shore Task Force, City of Beverly. Do not presently see Darlene. North Suburban Planning Council, Town of Burlington. Do not see Burlington at the moment. South Shore Coalition, Town of Hull.
Chris Diorio, representing Hull Select Board Chair Erwin Nessoff.
Welcome. Southwest Advisory Planning Committee, Town of Rentham. Also not seeing Rachel. Three Rivers Interlocal Council, Town of Norwood.
Good morning, Tom O'Rourke from the town of Norwood, representing the Trick sub-region.
Morning. Is there anyone who would wish to be acknowledged this morning that I have not yet called? We have quorum, and that calls the roll, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dave. Next item is the chair's report, and I just have one item. The town of Lexington has been elected as a newly seated member of the MPO. Today is their first meeting, and we'd like to welcome Megan Roche. Megan, do you have anything you'd like to say?
No, I'll just be really quick. Excited to be joining you all and representing our 13 communities in the Magic subregion, and good timing. I'll look forward to meeting you all in person next week as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Megan, and welcome aboard. Next item on the agenda is the Executive Director's Report. Tegan?
Thank you, Chair, and welcome, Megan, as well. Looking forward to working with you in the coming years. So if we could go to the next slide, please, and I'll start my report for today. I have one announcement and an engagement update, some staffing updates, and then some news about the agenda. I think I may have the order of the slides a little bit backwards, so let's see what happens as we go through here. So next slide. Okay, so in terms of announcements, in a recent meeting of statewide MPO leadership, those are called Transportation Manager Group meetings or TMG meetings. Recently, MassDOT and FHWA at that meeting announced that MPOs within Massachusetts will be shifting from a 4-year long-range transportation plan update cycle, which would have meant that we would have updated our July 2023 LRTP in 2027. But shifting that to a 5-year update cycle, which adds an extra year, so the next update is not due until 2028. So want to make sure the board was aware of that. Our process is still going to look pretty close to what it has, but or what we've been planning, but it gives us a bit more time on items that have been previously more time constrained. So in this coming calendar year, beginning in January, we'll begin updating you more on development activities like the needs assessment, long-term performance measures, and new approaches to scenario planning. So if you have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to reach out to the MPO activities team, including Erin McGuire and Dave Hong. Next slide, please. Okay. So, reordering myself. So on December 2nd, we held the first of what we hope to be semi-annual municipal engagement events in partnership with MEPC sub-regional coordinators. We had a great turnout at the meeting with over 70 municipal staff attendees who represented more than half of the cities and towns in the region. So we were really thrilled about that. Staff in this meeting, we provided overviews of several MPO work areas, and we also held subregion specific breakout sessions with support and facilitation from the subregional representatives on this board. So thank you very much to those subregional representatives. It's really great to see kind of a building link between you all and the communities in your region, subregion, and the MPO work. So we hope to hold the next region-wide municipal convening in the spring at this point. All right, next slide, please. So we have a couple staffing updates. Usually I'm saddened to announce a resignation, but we have a really nice twist on this one. So Sam Taylor's last day with the MPO was Friday, November 14th. Apologies, we didn't get a chance to announce that in advance. We didn't have an MPO meeting in November. And just want to say that since his time here, when he started in 2022, Sam made great contributions as a member of the MPO planning and policy team. He led the agency's performance-based planning and programming work and supported advancing the air quality monitoring initiative and had been contributing to the long-range transportation plan needs assessment. However, he left us to pursue an opportunity as an MPO liaison at the Office of Transportation Planning at Mass DOT. So he has also just this week been announced as being assigned to be the liaison for the Boston Region MPO. So you'll continue to see him and can congratulate him on this next stage in his career. Next slide, please. There we go. I can also announce a couple of new hires today that I'm excited about. First, we had mentioned, I think, this hire in the past, but Billy Chupp just joined the MPO as the data manager, the manager of the data management group on December 1st. He brings over 8 years of experience in transportation data analysis and environmental modeling, and he has a passion for applying data-driven approaches to impactful public sector work. As an engineer and data scientist at the Volpe National Transportation Systems Center, Billy led the development of tools and analyses supporting federal transportation initiatives. So we are now very excited to have him on our data management team, managing that team. And Billy, if you could just say a quick hello so people can associate the name with a face, that would be wonderful.
Absolutely. Can you all hear me okay?
We can.
Awesome. Hello. Great to meet all of you, and really, really excited to be here. Yeah, like Tegan said, spent almost 9 years at the Volpe Center in the federal government, and doing data analysis, environmental analysis, and project management over there. I'm just really excited to sort of refocus my energy on local projects, and explore my passion for the Boston and surrounding region. I'm really excited to work with all of you.
Great. Thank you, Billy. You'll see a couple chats come your way probably welcoming you. So I also want to welcome you again and looking forward to working together.
Thank you.
We will have another person coming on board relatively soon. So I'll just announce it now. In a couple of weeks, Scott Powder will be joining the MPO as a senior transportation planner. He is bringing with him extensive experience in both public and private transportation sectors. His most recent role was a transportation planner in Chicago. And in that role, he was the lead on multiple corridor studies. He's also contributed to a variety of multimodal projects like Safe Roads to School initiatives. So we are looking forward to bringing him on board later this month as well. All right, next slide. So that's all for announcements, but for just a quick recap of today's agenda, after our regular business, some reports and the meeting minutes, we will bring to you as an action item a work scope to support the MBTA and a rapid transit capacity analysis. That study will be focused on evaluating the heavy rail network to understand where there's excess capacity or where capacity is limited, both under existing conditions and for a variety of future service and ridership scenarios. We will then have a presentation and conversation leading to an action about TIP project readiness guidelines. We have previewed these guidelines with the board back in October after some significant coordination and work had been going on with MassDOT staff and members of the TIP committee. But just as a reminder, the key purpose of those proposed guidelines, which Ethan will be summarizing for you again, is to ensure that the MPO's capital program can actually deliver the best results that it can for the region. Then we will bring forward an action item around TIP adjustment 2 for the 26 to 30 TIP. It involves a small cost revision for a Cape Ann Transportation Authority, CATA, project, as well as the consolidation of 3 projects for the Metro West Regional Transit Authority. So hear about that and hopefully can move that on. Then also we'll ask you as an action item to come back to Amendment 1 for the TIP, for the 26 to 30 TIP, where it's been out for a public comment period that's concluded. And so we'll ask if you'll endorse that amendment. And then finally, definitely not last but not least, will be Seth Asante's last presentation to this board before his retirement. and he will be reporting on the completion of the federal fiscal year 2025 corridor study on Route 114 and Salem. So I hope you'll also congratulate him on his next steps, as we did at a prior meeting as part of that presentation. So next slide. So our next meeting is next week. It is the in-person with a remote option annual meeting. It is held at a different time of day at 1:00 p.m. at the Transportation Boardroom in the Transportation Building at 10 Park Plaza in Boston. We have shared a draft agenda so far with members, and a public agenda will be posted imminently if it is not already posted today. And just as a reminder, we like to meet about half an hour in advance at the start of the meeting, and we'll offer some refreshments so that there can be some networking before we start the meeting. And just also as a side note, we will also have a virtual meeting the following week on December 18th, I believe that it is. So just please keep those items in your calendar for this month. And that is all I have. Mr. Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tegan. Any questions for Tegan? Lynn, you got a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Question and then a quick comment. So can give a little more explanation for the rationale for extending the LRTP cycle, to 5 years?
Do you want me to speak to that, David, or would you like?
Sure, you can speak to that. I think it was at the MPO's request, so sure, you can speak.
Yeah, so the MPO's requests have been that since we're in conformity, generally speaking, with some of the environmental requirements, we're allowed to, from the federal perspective, we're allowed to operate on a five-year cycle for an update. We had been traditionally all of the MPOs across the state lined up to do the 4-year cycle, so it made it a bit, I think, perhaps inefficient from the perspective of MassDOT review and federal review to have some MPOs on a 5-year cycle and some MPOs on a 4-year cycle. So this request came given that most of the MPOs were already sort of able to be on a 5-year cycle, to bring all of the MPOs in the region into that 5-year cycle. So we appreciate it because it gives us a bit more time to explore some of the more creative things that we can do. For example, with updating the next version of the travel demand model and some of the scenario planning that we can do as part of this process. So I think that probably answers your question, Len, but is there anything more you wanted to hear about that?
Well, yeah, it does mean, and I'm happy to see it because, as you know, I really feel that we need to have a thorough discussion or review of the needs assessment before we do scenario planning and various other things related to the TIP. So I hope that will really give us a chance, to do that. I know that's always been the goal, but for the timing, that 4-year cycle, was really tight. And I know we've had, resource constraints, and those may happen again, but hopefully this extra year will give us a chance to really review that needs assessment because it's just so important. And the MPO staff does such great work in pulling that all together that if we could do that, I think it'd benefit us all. That's all. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for that, Len. We are in the thick of the bringing the needs assessment together right now. So you can definitely expect to hear more about that in the coming year. And I agree. I think it gives us a little bit more time together to sort of think through and process the implications of that assessment. So we're looking forward to that as well.
Thank you. Any other questions for Tegan? Seeing none, the next item on the agenda is public comments. Are there any at this time? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, if you have a comment during the meeting, please raise your hand and we will try to call on you. Next item is the committee chairs reports. Are there any? General.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The TIP Process Engagement and Readiness Committee last met on November 6th. We had 3 agenda items. It was a tight agenda. We are first joined by representatives from the City of Lynn. They shared an update on the Western Avenue project, including the project's limits, key features of the chosen design alternative, and some recently completed and upcoming design milestones. This is part of a larger effort to facilitate proactive information sharing in advance of TIP development, particularly around municipal proponent projects. And I know I left the presentation excited about how the selective alternative is advancing MPO goals, creating a safer street for vulnerable road users, and better bus service for riders on some regionally significant routes. So thanks for everyone who had a role in bringing that together. Speaking of tip development, the second agenda item, Ethan laid out the timeline for developing the federal fiscal years 2027 to 31 tip. Wanted to take the opportunity to remind everyone that project applications close on January 2nd, and that that will be followed by sub-regional readiness days. These sub-regional readiness days are critically important for municipal project proponents to really participate, so that staff can really facilitate information sharing during tip readiness days, which will be in early February. We expect scenario development to happen in March and April, leading to a final endorsement the first week of June. Ethan also did highlight a few differences that we'll expect in scenario development. We're planning for an additional scenario development conversation at the board level earlier in the development process, and that's to help guide subsequent discussions by the TIP committee that then are going to inform the conversations and decisions we take at the full board level. So those are two differences, and then another one, very apropos to our agenda today, is that staff are hoping to really use these tip readiness guidelines that we're voting on to develop the readiness scenario. So more on that. And we did spend the end of our agenda focused on the tip readiness policy. Adriana previewed how that will be used to anticipate and has already been used to start anticipating funding deficits and surpluses that we'll be working with in the spring, and giving staff more time to solicit, score, and prioritize potential fill-in projects. So we got a little bit of a preview of how that will be used. We didn't have sufficient time in the meeting to have like a robust conversation about the policy and its application that would like take us to being able to vote as a committee to recommend the policy to the full board. I did have some conversations following the meeting with MPO staff, and we determined that the best course of action was some outreach to individual members to answer some of their questions, followed by a discussion and vote at the full board meeting today. So I'd really like to thank Ethan, Adriana, Annette, Tegan, and everyone else on staff who's been making time to have those conversations during what I know is a busy and holiday-dense time of the year. I'd also like to applaud TIP committee members, MPO staff, and MassDOT for really engaging with this policy so openly and thoughtfully, and to express my gratitude to the whole board for taking the vote last spring that directed the committee to craft a set of expectations for project proponents. It was a leap of faith that we could really come together and create expectations that were responsive to the unique and complex challenges that we all face, while also centering the collective interests that we all share in delivering projects that are municipal and regional priorities. And that's been something that we've been struggling to do with some of the challenges that the program has faced. So I'm really proud of what we've been able to accomplish this summer and fall. On October 9th, this board endorsed a rescoring policy that will allow us to actually, it sets clear expectations for information sharing, and that'll allow us to better understand how the projects we fund advance MPO goals. That was crucial. And today we have an opportunity to endorse a readiness policy, and that will allow us to really ensure the future viability of the regional target program while honoring our commitment to fair, data-driven decision-making. So I look forward to the presentation and the discussion, and then taking this important vote with you all. So thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Any questions for Jen? Seeing none, are there any other committee chairs reports at this time? Then we will move to the Community Advisory Council report.
Great, thank you. Caitlin Allen Conley, representing the Community Advisory Council. So we had our last meeting on November 11th, and we heard from 4 council members on their mission and their work, including from the 495 Metro West Partnership. Sure, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, Maspahake, the Watertown TMA, and the town of Natick. And we will continue to hear from our members over the course of the next several meetings. We also had a presentation on November 11th from the MPO on the blue bikes and MPTA, the UPW discrete study, evaluating the role of blue bikes in supporting first and last mile transportation needs from the T. We will not be holding a meeting in December, but instead several advisory council members will attend the annual meeting, and I will be there to represent the advisory council. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Any questions for Caitlin? Seeing none, next item on the agenda is the action item on the minutes. Can we get a motion in a second to approve the minutes of September 4th? Please state your name for the record when making the motion. Brad Rawson.
Thank you, Chair. I'll move to approve the minutes as drafted.
Thank you, Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa, MAPC. I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Any comments, changes, questions, or suggestions? Seeing and hearing none, please call the roll.
Certainly, beginning with David Moeller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
Laura Gilmore,
Yes.
Tyler Terrassi,
Tyler Trossi, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Hannah Switlikowski,
Hannah Swilikowski, yes.
Caitlin Allen Connolly,
Caitlin Allen Kelly, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Patrick Hoey,
Patrick Hoey abstain.
acknowledged, Jay Monty,
Jay's not here, but Eric Molinari, abstain. I was not present.
thank you. Also recording that as well. David Kozis,
David Kosis, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Chu, Town of Brookline, present and yes.
Brad Rawson,
Brad Rawson, yes.
Megan Roach,
Megan Roach, abstain.
abstain. Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Nguyen,
Darlene Nguyen, yes.
Christy Orio,
Chris Diorio, yes.
Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Any board member that I have not yet called upon for this vote? With that, this motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dave. Next item is an action item on a work scope for the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority Heavy Rail Capacity Analysis. Joe DeLordo, whenever you're ready, Joe.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joe DeLordo, and I'm a data analyst in the MPO's Project Analysis and Applications Group. Today, I'm presenting a work scope for a study called MBTA Heavy Rail Capacity Analysis. The client for this work will be the MBTA. This project will have a schedule of 9 months from the notice to proceed and will have a budget of $75,000 funded by 5303 Transit Planning Funds. The MBTA's recently released Service Priorities Initiative, Full T Ahead, lays out long-term service priorities for the MBTA system. Full T Ahead sets ambitious goals for more frequent all-day transit service that serves evolving regional needs. As the MBTA plans for a future where transit is the preferred mode of travel in the Boston region, it will be critical to ensure that the transit system has sufficient capacity to serve a growing number of trips. To that end, this study aims to identify areas of the heavy rail rapid transit network where excess capacity may exist or where the network may be capacity constrained, both currently and under a variety of future service and ridership scenarios. The study's objectives are to analyze system capacity, evaluate tools, data, and methods, and facilitate long-term service planning. The study will begin with the data exploration phase, where staff will explore the available data and tools that might support an analysis of heavy rail system capacity, including MBTA ridership data, the TDM23 travel demand model, and the MPO's new simplified trips on project software model, or STOPS model. With this knowledge, staff will establish a methodology of measuring capacity on the heavy rail network. Staff will then work with the MBTA to define a set of future scenarios to be analyzed. These scenarios will vary by land use, ridership, and the amount of transit service provided. In Task 3, MPO staff will model these scenarios, identifying areas where excess capacity may exist on the network and areas where the network may be capacity constrained. And finally, we will produce a technical memorandum documenting our findings and any necessary materials to support the application of this analysis. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions for Joe? Seeing none, can I get a motion and a second to approve this work scope as presented? And please state your name for the record when making the motion. Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa, MAPC. I make a motion to support the work scope as presented.
Lynn Diggins.
Leonard Diggins, representing Arlington, seconds motion.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Please call the roll.
Certainly. David Moeller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
Laura Gilmore,
Laura Gilmore, yes.
Tyler Tarasi,
Tyler Tarasi, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Hannah Switlikowski,
Hannah Swilikowski, yes.
Caitlin Allen Connolly,
Yes.
Genro,
Genro, yes.
Patrick Hoey,
Patrick Hoey, yes.
Eric Molinari,
Eric Molinari, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kosis, yes, and Jen Martin will be voting on the remaining items today for Newton. Thank you.
thank you. Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Chute, yes.
Brad Rawson,
Brad Rawson, yes.
Megan Roach,
Megan Roach, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
Christy Ario,
Mysterio, yes.
Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Any other board member who wishes to be acknowledged? Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dave. Next item on the agenda is an action item on the TIP project readiness guidelines. Ethan Lapointe and Adriana Jacobson. I think you're going first, Ethan, but whenever you guys are ready.
Yes, I'm presenting this one, and good morning, everybody. My name's Ethan Lapointe. I am a senior transportation planner on MPO staff. This first presentation here today, if we can please go on to the next slide, is a presentation to request a vote to endorse updated TIP project readiness guidelines. On the next slide, if we can go there, please, I'll go over the content of this presentation, namely starting with a statement of the objective of this policy update, then going into the specific elements of this policy, describing how implementation will be conducted, and culminating in a discussion around the policy with a request for a vote to endorse it. It's worth noting this policy has been listed on the MPO meeting calendar for review for about a week now. We posted, I think, on Wednesday. So it is available for your reference throughout this presentation as well. If we can go on to the next slide and the one following that, please. The objective of this policy is rooted in the need to provide the MPO board with data-driven and fair metrics to create a methodology for the management of the Transportation Improvement Program and the projects contained within it. The absence of a formal decision-making readiness framework has led to substantial and repeated cost increases for more than 5 years of program management, dramatically reduced the overall number of projects within the regional target program that are successfully advertising in their programmed years, jeopardized funding status for current projects as these cost increases take place and as projects are being moved around throughout the entirety of the program, and another result being that this has also severely constrained the funding that the MPO has available in each new TIP to fund new projects in those outer years when projects are being pushed back. Now, if we can go on to the next slide, please, it's worth noting that this is an updated readiness policy, and it is a supporting element to multiple other actions that this MPO board has taken over these past few years in recognition of these challenges to try to better manage the program. Starting more recently with the adoption of a project rescoring policy, incorporating updates to the operations plan, including the formation of the TIP Process Readiness and Engagement Committee, and also incorporating better collaboration with project proponents. But critically, this policy builds upon the foundation set by the 2021 TIP project cost policies that were developed by the TIP Project Cost Ad Hoc Committee. And that 2021 policy stated that as a next step for implementation, that benchmarks be created for each of the programmed years of the TIP. This policy is the implementation of those benchmarks that were called for back in 2021. And I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention that even with this policy, MassDOT staff are also working with MPO staff and project proponents, as they have been over these past few years, to better improve the project scoping process and design process to address more project challenges earlier in the project process and mitigate risk that may emerge in the later stages of project development. Risks that, when realized, have been major drivers of those cost increases and project delays we've seen in recent years. The point of all of this is to say that this readiness policy is part of a broader strategy and methodology to improve program management here. It is not being done in isolation, but it is a critical component to addressing these TIP challenges. On the next slide, what this policy is functioning to do that many of these other activities have yet to do is that it functions to program the projects that are being considered for the TIP in the year that they are most likely to advertise based on a more objective and data-driven framework. Currently, based on staff's own analysis of the program, based on our understanding of successfully advertised projects, the majority of projects that are currently in the regional target program, about 2/3, are not currently in a realistic programming year. And again, this is based on the pace of recent projects that have successfully advertised for bids. This policy is meant to give the MPO board a framework for decision-making during each annual TIP development process, and it also helps to give proponents, before we get into that process, realistic expectations as to where their projects are most likely to be programmed if they are selected for funding, and which kinds of milestones they should be aiming to complete as they continue to build momentum behind their projects. And critically, it mitigates the impacts of project delays, not just on the projects themselves that are being delayed or seeing cost increases, but those other projects in that program year that may be jeopardized if there's a large confluence of delays into that year, creating deficits and putting those other projects in disadvantageous positions. So if we can go on to the next slide and the one after this policy has 3 different elements we've presented before back in October to the MPO board. The first, which is the core element of the readiness policy and the one that's key to enforcement, is this minimum design requirement. That is the benchmarking for each of the 5 programmed years of the TIP. It states for a minimum project design stage to justify a project's funding in a given programming year. There are also 2 additional elements that contribute to risk flags that a project may have. Risk flags would not necessarily change a programming year, but it helps to create an objective methodology for helping MPO members assess the extent to which a project may have additional concerns that need to be worked out besides things that just appear in the schedule. Specifically, a next milestone requirement where, using project schedule, staff will evaluate the risk of sustaining the year that is prescribed by the minimum design requirement, and also regular cost updates, requiring that projects submit updated cost estimates no less than once every 1.5 years, so about 3 times over the course of a 5-year TIP cycle, to ensure that projects don't go, for example, 4 or 5 years without a cost update, as many projects currently within the regional target program are in that position for. On the next slide, just to get into a little bit more detail on these minimum design requirements, these requirements for each year of the TIP have been identified based again on the paces of successfully advertised projects. The dates that are being listed on screen here help to illustrate what these minimum design requirements would look like if they were to be put in effect for the federal fiscal years 2027 to 31 TIP. And these dates would be the ones that project proponents would need to be at the start of program scenario development around the projection of March 1st, 2026. So if your project would need to be in federal fiscal year 2027, year 1, in March 1st, 2026, your project would need to have a 100% design submission. For year 2, the project would need a 75% design submission with comment resolution from MassDOT staff, or a combined 75 and 100% design submission. Year 3 is a 25% design public hearing completed, which is the closest analog that staff have for a full 25% design approval. Year 4 is MassDOT having confirmed receipt of 25% design with 25% comment resolution. And year 5, as we discussed back in October, a pre-25% design submission, which is one of those new elements that MassDOT has incorporated over the past 4 years since that original 2021 cost policy to better incorporate and manage project risk at earlier stages of the project development process. On the next slide, we then have those milestones I mentioned. For year one, projects would need to be at plan specification and estimates within 9 months to not be flagged as high risk for holding year one. Year two, 100% design submission within 6 months. Year three, 75% submission within 6 months. Year four, 25% design public hearing scheduled. And year five, a 25% design received within 6 months of submission. So with all of that, I think the main outstanding question here on the next slide is around implementation of this policy. What does enforcement look like if it were to be put in place for this next tip cycle? Namely, this happens in a couple different stages. First, on the next slide, staff are going to alert all proponents and new applicants to the tip about the policy update if it is put into effect. And this enables project proponents about 1 month of information of time to provide information before the sub-regional readiness days. As a reminder, sub-regional readiness days were one of those new activities that staff incorporated into the tip process during last year's development cycle, where each of the different proponents based on their MAPC sub-region come to a workshop that is basically held by MPO staff to provide updates on how their projects are faring and indicate any areas in which MPO staff may be able to assist them to continue to move projects along. These will take place starting on January 13th through January 15th, depending on what your municipality's MAPC sub-region is. After that takes place on the next slide, this is the key element of enforcement where the minimum design requirements really come in. Namely, MPO staff are only going to create a readiness scenario that aligns with this policy and or MassDOT staff's own analysis conducted during the tip readiness days. For a refresher, the readiness scenario is that report and product that MPO staff make based on the recommendations that MassDOT staff have historically provided at the tip readiness days exercise. It is the foundational scenario that all subsequent programming decisions build upon as we get into the real programming development season in March. So a project will only be programmed in the readiness scenario to reflect its minimum design requirement and how it aligns there. The risk flags from those milestone requirements and the cost elements will also be applied based on milestone and cost guidelines. And again, there's other considerations that may apply for those risk flags, things like permit compliance and the like there. So just mentioning that as well. Now, it is worth noting that this is just for the readiness scenario. On the next slide, the role of the MPO board in scenario development is largely unchanged under this policy, as further decision-making by the MPO board to build on that readiness scenario is still required. Fiscal constraint is not a major consideration in the readiness scenario. And when I say fiscal constraint, what I mean is that for each of the 5 years of the tip, the funding that has been allocated to the MPO for consideration of projects to program cannot be exceeded by the amount of projects in that year. So for example, in a future tip development cycle, year 3 of that tip may have $30 million of funding available. However, under the readiness scenario, $70 million of projects may have a best fit year of year 3. That readiness scenario is going to show a $40 million deficit, and it will be up to the MPO board in the later meetings around programming scenarios to resolve that deficit. So again, this is meant to just set a foundation and identify the best fit years, but it will still require action by the MPO board to address matters like fiscal constraint or other considerations there. If we can go on to the next slide, the main outcomes of this policy that staff are looking to see here is ensure that there is a long-term success resulting from the implementation of this program. As I mentioned at the start of this presentation, this update's one of multiple efforts that are being pursued to guarantee that long-term health of the TIP program. And I say long-term as this is going to take work across multiple TIP cycles to rectify those programming challenges around cost and delays. But what it does do in the near term is create a proactive measure to ensure that the MPO can manage the program effectively and has the most time available to it to make decisions around meeting the needs of the region's transportation network. And also critically, this is about evaluation and refinement. This is building upon that 2021 cost policy and other previous exercises. And staff are also expecting to refine this further in future TIP development cycles. After potential implementation this year, staff are going to continue to tweak this policy to incorporate other nuances or considerations that we've heard feedback from already from MPO members and members of the TIP committee, among other stakeholders as well. So With all of that in mind, on the next slide, staff are requesting that the board vote to adopt these readiness guidelines, which would take effect with this year's federal fiscal year's 2027 to 31 tip development cycle. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ethan. Questions? Brad Rawson.
Thank you, Chair. More of a comment than a question. I just want to make it very clear to board members, to staff, to our guests and our partners that Somerville is supportive of the policy as proposed. Definitely want to thank staff and board members for the really thoughtful and collaborative process that has generated this proposal, with a special round of applause going to Jen Rowe from the City of Boston for leading our TIP Readiness Committee. I think it's important to remind us that the need is clear. Our MPO has been on a journey of transparency and process improvements for many years. Somerville was a big advocate of the 2021 cost policy that was referenced in the staff presentation in the memo. And although my colleague Tom Bent could not be here today to a family funeral, he is supportive, he's been a champion, and he's watching closely and committed to continuing doing the work with you all. So we've learned a lot over the last few years, Chair, and please, folks, as we discuss and debate, let's just remember that the status quo is broken. It's creating huge risks for projects that we have already committed to. Status quo is broken and it's blocking new projects from entering the TIP pipeline. And the status quo is broken in that it creates and perpetuates confusion and frustration for this board and our staff as we go through scenario development, despite our best intentions. So I think the readiness guidelines as proposed are an important step in changing that status quo. So at the appropriate time after discussion, Chair, I'll be happy to make a motion to support the readiness policy as drafted. Thanks.
Thank you, Brad. Eric?
Yeah, I'd like to echo just everything Brad said. I also I support this. The development of the TIP over the past 5 or so years has been a challenge. I think we really need to be clear about what we are looking for, what is needed in terms of readiness for these years. I think the earlier we can flag projects, the earlier we can understand what changes need to be made, we can plan for it. Over the past, I want to say like 5 tip cycles, we've been making decisions in the last couple of meetings right before we're required to put it out for public comment about projects, because we have all these freed up funds because we've been pushing things out. So I agree with everything Brad said. I'm supportive of this policy, and I also want to echo the thanks for Jen Rowe in creating the space and chairing the TIP committee, and for staff putting this together.
Thank you, Eric. Lynn Diggins.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And nice move there, Brad. You grabbed the motion. I like that, But and I agree with both Eric, and Brad, and especially express my appreciation to Ethan and Ford the day before Thanksgiving. Spending a whole hour with me talking about this and giving me some really good insights, as to some of the issues that have led to the situation in which we find ourselves. And I think we're doing a good job of treating a lot of the symptoms. A lot of the causes are still going to be out there, and I think we really need to talk about maybe some other ways of approaching how we fund projects as an MPO, especially when we look at how other MPOs program funds, because I think there are a lot of efficiencies that we lose in the way that we approach things, and it may be that if the MPO pays more, we funds more, we get a greater return, for that investment. That's perhaps a conversation for another day, but I am supportive of this. But I do have a question, and that's in the policy enforcement on page 6, the second paragraph. It says these new guidelines would revise and augment the existing policy by relaxing the minimum standard for new project applications to a pre-25% submission threshold. We are going to require that 25%, right? So we're not relaxing things, are we? I'm just a little bit confused, by the wording in that.
Ethan?
Yeah, so the current policy that is in place by the MPO states that the project that would want to obtain funding on the TIP would need to be at minimum at 25% design. As we've discussed in previous MPO meetings, there's several different ways to define 25% design, but in particular, over these last 4 years, that definition of what is 25% design has also changed. Namely, a lot more elements of the project development process have been incorporated in the 25. So it takes much longer now for a project to obtain 25% than it had in prior years of the TIP. When we presented this policy initially to the MPO board back in October, we had mentioned that the pre-25% requirement was a new requirement that MassDOT instated, or a new submission, I should say, that was incorporated into the project development process after the 2021 policy was adopted, that still incorporated a lot of the elements that 2021 policy wanted to see embedded, such as subsurface utility, intersection control evaluation elements, most of the alternatives for a project being ruled out, bridge type studies, hydraulic analyses, etc. So it is a lower threshold than what today a 25% design is, but in terms of its spirit and consistency with what 25% meant back in 2021, it's about in line with that.
Okay. All right. Right. That fits my general understanding of things, Mead, and so yeah, it does nothing to change my support. Mead, I'm as strong as ever. So thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Seeing none. Oh wait, Aaron, shoot.
Apologies for the late hand, but thank you, Aaron Chute, Town of Brookline. I think I would like to, so I very much support this, and I'm on the Tipper committee, and I think we've really been working hard with staff to provide some clarity and guidance. So appreciate that direction from the overall MPO board, and we hope that this can be helpful. I do sort of want to put the one piece out there that we've all been wrestling with a little bit are these really important projects that are in the queue that we all want to see as being successful. And I think in working with the municipalities, with the consultants, with Mass DOT, I'm hoping that we can work together and keep these important projects that are on our current TIP moving forward successfully. I think we're going to need really the help of Mass DOT in their review to keep some of these on schedule. So we're looking for close collaboration and coordination in order to be able to do that. And I think there may be a few little bumps in this transition period, but we're hoping for a process that is more streamlined and improved going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Other comments or questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion and a second to adopt these criteria as presented today? Please state your name for the record when making the motion. Brad Rawson.
Thank you, Chair. I'll move that the Boston Region MPO approve the tip readiness guidelines as presented today. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Lynn Diggins.
Lynn Diggins, I get the second. So thank you for Arlington.
Please call the roll. Motion has been made and seconded.
Absolutely. David Moeller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
Laura Gilmore,
Yes.
Tyler Terasi,
Tyler Terasi, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Hannah Switlikowski,
Hannah Swilikowski, yes.
Caitlin Allen Connolly,
Caitlin Allen Conley, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Patrick Hoey,
Patrick Hoey, yes.
Eric Molinari,
Eric Molinari, yes.
Jen Martin,
Jen Martin, yes.
Glenn Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Aaron Chute,
Chute, yes.
Brad Rawson,
Brad Rawson, yes.
Megan Roach,
Megan Roach, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
Chris Diorio,
Stiorio, yes.
Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Have I missed anyone? Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody who had put in the hard effort to get this to this point. Next item is an action item on tip adjustment number 2, Ethan Lapointe.
Right, thank you. If we can go on to the next slide, please. This is the second adjustment to the federal fiscal years 2026 to 30 Transportation Improvement Program. There's about 4 projects in this adjustment. If we can go on to the next slide, please. Addressing one project that is within the Cape Ann Transportation Authority, and also the consolidation of 3 Metro West Regional Transit Authority projects in and around the Blandon Bus Hub facility in Framingham into a single line item for improvements. If we can go on to the next slide, this starts off with those MWRTA projects. The first project is the Intermodal Transit Facility at Blandon project, which has a current budget of $1.2 million. Now, the project will now incorporate about $1.25 million worth of additional elements from electric vehicle charging and electrification costs, and also restrooms at the Blandon Hub and Framingham commuter rail stations. Again, these are consolidation of 2 other projects into this one line item. So the project's budget is going to go from $1.2 million to $2.45 million. However, there is no net change in the overall scope of work or cost between each of these 3 projects. This is functionally project bundling here. There are no other proposed changes for any of these 3. So all the work is still going to be getting done on the same budget that is currently reflected in MWRTA's TIP. On the next slide, we then have one cost change for the Cape Ann Transportation Authority. This is for an automatic passenger counting and automated vehicle location project, or APCAVL. This is an entirely state-funded project, although there is some additional funding on a separate year from the Boston Region MPO. The current project budget was an estimated or anticipated $680,000 for federal fiscal year 2026. The actual amount of funding that will be expended within federal fiscal year 2026 is $475,429. So again, the cost of this project isn't decreasing based on actual costs that will be incurred for work in federal fiscal year 2026. I'll also note this project remains funded at $180,000 per year in other federal fiscal years between 2027 and 2030. The cost balances for each of those years are unimpacted by this adjustment. So with that, on the next slide, this is a TIP adjustment. So on the next slide, please. There is no public comment period required for TIP adjustment, and therefore staff are requesting that the board votes to endorse adjustment 2 as presented here today.
Thank you, Ethan. Very clear. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, can I get a motion and a second to approve this adjustment as presented today? Tyler Terrassi.
Tyler Trossi will move to approve adjustment 2 to the TIP as presented today.
Thank you. Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa, I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Please call the roll.
Certainly. David Moeller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
Laura Gilmore,
Yes.
Tyler Terrassi,
Tyler Trossi, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Hannah Switlikowski,
Hannah Swilikowski, yes.
Caitlin Allen Connolly,
Caitlin Allen Conley, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Patrick Hoey,
Patrick Hoey, yes.
Eric Molinari,
Eric Molinari, yes.
Jen Martin,
Jen Martin, yes.
Glenn Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Shute, yes.
Brad Rawson,
Brad Rawson, yes.
Megan Roach,
Megan Roach, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
Chris Diorio,
Chris Diorio, yes.
Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Amendment 1 to the current TIP. Ethan Lapointe.
All right, thank you. So for the third presentation here, if we can go on to the next slide. And the one after this, please. Amendment 1 to the federal fiscal years 2026 to 2030 TIP include cost increases on 2 regional target projects within 2026, and also reflected the delay of the Stratton School Improvements Project in the town of Arlington, which was previously in federal fiscal year 2025 of the 2025-29 TIP, back into the regional target program by being reincorporated into the 2026 target program. It also included the return of some unobligated earmark projects and discretionary grant projects that were previously funded in federal fiscal year 2025 did not obligate their funding in 2025 and are now being refunded in 2026 to obligate 26. There's also some additional funding source changes that were incorporated into the amendment, including one for statewide highway project for bridge and interstate preservation work. If we can go on to the next slide, Amendment 1 was an amendment, and it did have a 21-day public comment period spanning between October 27 and November 22nd. However, there were no public comments that staff received during that time that related to this amendment. And on the next slide, please, staff are requesting that the board vote to endorse Amendment 1.
Thank you, Ethan. Any questions for Ethan? Seeing none, can I get a motion and a second to approve Amendment 1 as presented today? Please state your name for the record when making the motion. Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa, I'll make a motion to approve Amendment 1.
Thank you. Jen Rowe.
Jen Rowe will second that motion.
Thank you. Motion having been made and seconded, please call the roll.
Yes. David Moeller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
Laura Gilmore,
Yes.
Tyler Terasi,
Tyler Terasi, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Hannah Switlikowski,
Hannah Swilkowski, yes.
Caitlin Allen Connolly,
Caitlin Allen Conley, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Patrick Hoey,
Patrick Hoey, yes.
Eric Molinari,
Eric Molinari, yes.
Jen Martin,
Jen Martin, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Aaron Shute,
And shoot, yes.
Brad Rawson,
Brad Rawson, yes.
Megan Roach,
Megan Roach, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
Chris Diorio,
Chris Diorio, yes.
Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Route 114 corridor study in Salem. Seth Asante. Whenever you're ready, Seth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. My name is Seth Asante, MPO staff. I'm a Chief Transportation Planner on the Multimodal Planning and Design team, and I'm excited to share the study results with you. This corridor study is part of the MPO's multimodal infrastructure program, and it is designed for communities to address transportation needs. In this presentation, I will start with a brief background of the study, then discuss the transportation concerns, followed by the proposed improvements, and conclude with the implementation process. Next slide, please. Here are the key takeaways from the study. Significant efforts were made to engage with the community to identify their concerns and explore potential solutions. The recommendations from the study were based on insights gained through collaboration with city staff, feedback from the advisory task force, community survey results, and data analysis. We also provided the necessary information to assist the city in initiating projects and funding programs available for implementing projects. And significant benefits can be achieved through safety and operational improvements to enhance multimodal transportation. Next slide, please. The MPO has committed to funding various corridor studies over the last decade, showcasing our ongoing dedication to enhancing safety and multimodal transportation. This map illustrates the communities that have benefited from these corridor studies. These studies provide the communities with the resources needed to address deficiencies in corridors before they commit to design and engineering. Next slide, please. The MPO staff uses a variety of factors to determine which corridor to study each year. The selection process is outlined on the left, and it's a collaborative effort that begins with engagement and also data-driven. We utilize agency tools and resources such as the Mass.Impact portal, the Vision Zero initiative, and also the MPO congestion management process to identify corridors, ensuring that our decisions are based on comprehensive information. We screen the corridors by applying the selection criteria outlined on the right-hand side, which includes safety, congestion, multimodal transportation, and others. Next slide, please. The MPO committed to studying Route 114 in Salem for safety and operational improvement and to enhance multimodal transportation. The Route 114 corridor was identified as a priority corridor due to several factors: a high incidence of crashes, particularly those involving vulnerable road users, operational issues affecting users, including speeding, outdated infrastructure, and congestion, and the multiple land uses and modes of transportation within the corridor. Next slide, please. The corridor includes a vibrant city-owned road that spans 3 miles from the Marblehead town line to the PBD city line. MassDOT owns the section of North Street Bridge overpass and also the section of North Street that crosses the North River culvert highlighted in red. The corridor is surrounded by residential, commercial, and cultural neighborhoods, making it an essential artery for the community. It directly connects key destinations such as the Salem State University, downtown Salem, and also the Salem Commuter Rail Station, highlighting its significance in facilitating access and connectivity within the city. It is an urban principal arterial and part of the national highway system, also making it eligible for federal and state aid, and it carries between 14,000 and 27,000 vehicles per day. Next slide, please. These photos show the Lafayette Street in the southern segment of the corridor, and also North Street in the northern part of the corridor. Next slide, please. We assembled an advisory committee of stakeholders to provide input throughout the study. The committee met at several milestones to review findings and provide feedback. They also provided local knowledge and expertise and shared information with the community and reviewed the findings. We also launched the community survey to gather opinions from on transportation concerns and explore potential solutions. Next slide, please. The following slides highlight the transportation concerns and provide summary of the existing conditions. A total of 685 responses were submitted, and more than 90% of the respondents travel frequently in the corridor, which also highlights their familiarity with the problems. And nearly 72% of the responses were from residents of Salem, also showing the local presence of the respondents, their familiarity with the corridor, and also the significance that it meant to the city of Salem. And about 70% of the concerns were related to driving. Next slide, please. These are the walking and biking challenges. They include safety and operations. Crosswalk safety and visibility was a major concern and was commented on during the survey. Also, respondents complained about speeding and insufficient protection for bike lanes. Next slide, please. The driving challenges included congestion and delay. Drivers complained that congestion was caused by poor signal timing and lack of signal coordination, and also outdated signal equipment, which makes it difficult to turn out into or out of side streets. Next slide, please. This highlights the safety concerns in the corridor. Route 114 is part of a high injury network, and a major portion of the corridor also has a high pedestrian crash risk, and portions of the corridor also has speeding concern, which is highlighted in red. Next slide, please. Several locations along the corridor also have congestion, which are shown here. And this congestion is causing traffic queuing along the corridor and also diverting traffic onto a residential street. Next slide, please. The next few slides describe the potential improvements for the corridor. Next slide, please. The improvement for the corridor was divided into 3 segments: North Street in the north, Norman and Washington Street in the middle, and Lafayette Street in the south. Also, the improvements were categorized into short, medium, and long-term improvements. The short-term improvements are less than 3 years, and the long-term improvements exceed more than 5 years. Regarding costs, low-cost improvements are less than $10,000, and high-cost improvement exceed $50,000. Next slide, please. These are the walking and biking improvements proposed for the corridor: adding crosswalk, installing rectangular flashing beacons, improving street and pedestrian scale lighting, installing curb extension and daylighting intersections, repairing and reconstructing sidewalk, and also protecting bike lanes. Next slide, please. The traffic safety and operational improvement include signalization, retiming and coordinating traffic signal, upgrading pedestrian signal equipment, and adding leading pedestrian intervals to some of the signalized intersections to improve pedestrian safety. Next slide, please. We also had signage and marking improvements, which were designed to improve operational efficiency of the corridor. They include speed limits and feedback signs at regular intervals, adding pedestrian crossing signs, installing signs and markings in advance to guide drivers, and evaluating right turn on red signage placement. Next slide, please. Here are the potential improvements for the Lafayette Street, and it includes improvement for safety for vulnerable roadway users, upgrading traffic signals to improve operational efficiency, protecting bike lanes, adding reconstructing sidewalk, and also resurfacing the roadway. Next slide, please. The following slides describe the implementation process that happens after most corridor studies. And this is a question that comes up most often after we complete corridor studies. Next slide, please. The improvements that were developed for the corridor can be categorized into or programmed into several projects, including complete street projects, safety improvement projects, traffic signal modernization projects, and also intersection improvement projects and pavement rehabilitation projects. Next slide, please. These are some of the funding programs that are available for implementing the improvement proposed for the corridor. And the Mass Grant Center portal and also the MPO website provide information about these funding programs. And the city of Salem is encouraged to pursue some of this funding to address the transportation issues in the corridor. Next slide, please. In summary, we help the city to identify the transportation concerns and also some of the improvement that can be used to improve safety for all roadway users. We also identify the funding sources to help the city implement some of the projects for the corridor. And I would like to thank the city councilors, city staff, the advisory committee, and all those who participated in the survey for their participation and also for their support in this study. And I would like to end and hand over to Mr. Chair for questions and feedback.
Thank you, Seth. Questions for Seth? Lynn Diggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Primarily a comment, and that is to say, this is outstanding report. Seth, you and your group, always do great work. You seem to like outdo yourselves with each of these corridor studies. I look at them and I see a new element, that is just really impressive. Table 4 is just a work of art, and it's just so extensive. And the appendix itself is really good. I especially appreciated seeing the responses from people on the committees. Quick question: How long did it take to do this study? Because looking at all the people involved, is pretty a lot of people. How long did it take you to do this?
It took about a year, and
Okay.
there was a lot of involvement from the advisory task force and also the city staff and city councillors, and that was why we got this outstanding products.
Yeah, no, it's really great, and I guess my other question slash request. Sure, it's easy enough to take table 4 and drop it into some AI and get a spreadsheet out of it. But do you have a spreadsheet?
Yeah.
Available that one could kind of like sort on, like time frames and various things in order to just kind of get a better handle on things based on however one wants to look at it.
Yeah, the tables are available in Word, in Excel, various formats. So the city can take it, and I think it will help the city focus on safety and accessibility projects that they are initiating for the corridor. So The table itself is very, very comprehensive. So we try to get some diagrams that can also illustrate to people who can take the time to go through all the tables to see the individual improvements.
Yeah, I mean, thorough. It's just really impressive, Seth. And so, thank you for all your work. Over the years. Yeah, we really appreciate you and your group. So, take care. Good luck in retirement or whatever you do. Somehow, I think you'll be around. Thank you. Take care.
Mhm.
Any other questions for Seth? Logan Casey.
Hi, everyone. Logan Casey, Sustainability Coordinator for the Town of Marblehead. Seth, I just wanted to say these studies are always great, echoing the other comments, but it's always very cool to see these studies happen in a neighborhood around you as well, too. So, I'll definitely be taking this back to our town staff in Marblehead, especially the recommendations around the Marblehead Rail Trail. We're, under design to improve the rail trail already. And I think, pushing us on improving pedestrian and bicyclist safety, especially on that important rail trail area is a good thing that we should be, talking about. It's great to get this kind of regional input as well, too. So, and I see David Kucharski's got his hand raised, but I'm sure he was involved with this. He's also a Marblehead resident. And, his work on our traffic safety advisory committee in Marblehead has really been pushing Marblehead to think more about pedestrian and bicyclist safety as well, too. So, yeah, thank you, Seth, for this study and your work.
Oh, really? Thank you.
David Kucharski.
Just wanted to again offer my thanks to Seth. It was a pleasure working with him and the other staff, and I think it really will help the city now with our ongoing efforts. It will dovetail exceptionally well with the recently completed safety action plan that we completed. So just wanted to say thank you, and looking forward to coming back to you all with future requests. So, and congratulations, Seth. Pleasure working with you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Seth? Seeing none. So Seth, I just want to say how fitting this is. I've known you for, I don't know, 30 years, right? And your last study is actually on a road that is probably 4 blocks from where I'm sitting. So that's pretty cool. And I also said, it's been great working with you. The MPO has always thought, you're doing incredible work, and we wish you nothing but happiness in your retirement. So thanks so much, Seth. Hey, let's clap.
Thank you.
Thanks, Seth.
Mhm.
I think that concludes our business except for member items. Are there any? Any member items? Seeing none. Can I get a motion in a second to adjourn, and please state your name for the record? Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa, I'll make a motion to adjourn and look forward to seeing everybody in a couple weeks, or next week, rather.
Jin Rowe.
Bro, I'll second that motion and also look forward to seeing everyone.
Thank you both. Any objections? Without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much. See everybody next week. Bye.
Thank you.